So welcome to Illustrator, folks. This is going to be what we call an overview first of Illustrator. And this is how I crack software. So I'm going to kind of go through that with you as if I've never seen Illustrator in my life. But this is what we do when we crack software. And it's a touch and go situation, but the steps that I'm going to show you are really what you have to set as a standard practice whenever you're working in software. So the first thing you want to be sure of is that you have as much real estate as possible on your screen. So close things out that you don't need them. And I'm trying to move this over. There we go. I guess this is it. Okay. So you want as much real estate as possible, especially if you're on a laptop and so forth. Minimize everything else. And when you minimize, what's really important about minimizing other things outside of Illustrator is it gives your computer more power. So if you're doing Spotify or you're listening to something, put it on your mobile device. Because if you're playing Spotify or anything off of your computer, it's taking the memory away from your Illustrator. So it's really important, like Spotify and things like that you listen to, put it on your mobile phone and let your computer only run Illustrator. Because when your files get bigger and bigger, you'll notice a lag. So this is one of my students. This is many moons ago, and he wanted to do a coffee shop. This was not a sustainable situation. This was just a coffee shop. And so he had multiple images like you're doing. But let's just take a look at the software. So I have minimized the software so that I see all the controls, because Zoom has their own controls, and I don't want to mess that up for us. So right away, Adobe is the reason why it's so successful is because it's a really smart UI design. So everything is very intuitive. Illustrator has the most cryptic of all the tools of Adobe, which what do I mean by cryptic? It means like you have to hover and things pop up. So remember, you have a hovering aspect. So you kind of just slide around things, especially when you're in tools, and things will pop up. So the first thing is always a file. And the number one thing when you work in Illustrator is you always start with a new. So let's do that first. Now, Adobe in Photoshop as well as Illustrator will give you all kinds of parameters for what is web. And if you'll notice, it changes the screen, which kind of confused me because it's vector and you can scale it up as much as you want and so forth. So I get thoroughly confused when I see 72 dpi, when I know it's vector. So the bottom line, my methodology that is always work in high resolution. And for my students who take my digital imaging class, they know you can always go down, right, Yamish? And so print is really what you want to work with. Now you can grab the sizes off of film and video. These are pixels. Art illustration uses points, but it also can use inches. I guess it can do feet, and it can. There is a maximum size in Illustrator. But so for us, let's work in print because logos are printed and you can always go down for a JPEG to the 72 dpi upon your export, which will be a JPEG. So for our purposes, the bottom line is always have the 300 dpi right here. Now, does anybody understand the difference between RGB and CMYK? Who knows that information? Well, since this is a video, I'll go quickly and tell you. CMYK is for print, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And RGB is for screen, anything that you plug in. Billboards are getting plugged in now, so it's LEDs, and that's RGB, which is red, green, and blue. And if you're a lighting director, if you took 3 lights, red light, green light, and blue light, and you all put it to one focal point on the stage, that combination of light would turn white. And that's what they do in theater design. So in other words, the shadows would be blue or green or red or even purple or aqua, depending on how you mix it and the angle where you place it. But the focal point of those 3 lights would be white. So that's for the web and video. But for all purposes, because we're going to deliver print and web, we're going to use CMYK for print. And print just means anything that's ink, anything that's hard copy, that's what CMYK is. So those are two critically important systems, and we'll get into other systems as we go along. So always, 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 whatever you work on in digital media, make it be 300 dpi. Now, video is another story. It's not going to be that automatically because it's always 72 dpi, but we're talking about design and motion design. So you want to bring in good resolution if that object is going to be scaled in video. So stick with 300 dpi and you can't go wrong. So right away, you can utilize this as like, you know, what's the size of the web, right? And they'll give you the size. And so the presets, view all the presets, as you can see. And it will give you different computers and so forth. So obviously, and they give you the largest. But for our purposes, we want print. So let's go to print. And zoom actually has, you want to turn this to inches. So now we're thinking inches. And what I always like to do when I do anything in print, even if it's a small logo, you want to do 13 by 19. Actually, we're going to do horizontal. So we do the width 19. Come on, zoom 19. Zoom really messes me up on the screen as far as typing sometimes. So that can be an issue. So it's sticky, as I say. Okay, so now we have a page that's 13 by 19, 19 by 13, and it's untitled. So that you always, first thing you do is always save it. Never go without saving, save as on your computer. And I'll put into curriculum and design. And I think I have a logo here. And I'm working with the Sustainable Ocean organization. So I'm going to call this Lobster and 01. And this is my file naming methodology that I use. You yourself should create a system for file naming. When you work in a studio, they'll give you a file naming protocol that you have to follow. You might as well find one for yourself. I use 01 for everything I do, no matter what it is, even if it's a letter or in Excel. And when I'm working on it again, I call it a higher number, so I never lose it. So if it crashes, or I lose it, or some problem there is, or somebody changes their mind and I have to go back, I can go back to 5 if I'm on 7. And so the higher number, to me, in my file naming protocol, is the last edit. I don't have to look at the dates. The higher number is my last edit. When I need space, like I've got too many versions, I have 25, I'm losing space, then I will delete 1 through 10. See if that gives me more space. Always keep at least 5 of your last highest versions. Because sometimes you want to go back, you go, oh, I want to go back and get that. And you can if you follow this methodology. Especially in animation, when you start getting a lot of frames and JPEG sequences, you're going to have 001. And then it stays numerical. So good way to come up with a system. And you do need one because multimedia is quite a lot of files. So by default, you can just leave this as it is. A lot of the windows that you have that pop up, pretty much you can trust Illustrator, but you do have to peruse a little bit about it. But by default, they're really giving you the best what they think. So I rely on that. So now we have that, and now what I need to do is I need to place my lobster. So even on this example here, to go through, as we will go back to our lobster and placing, and that would be placing the photograph, because we're going to be tracing the photograph. But just alone on this, when you're working in Illustrator, since this is the overview video, I'm going to want to be sure I want to fit it in screen. So seeing something, I don't see something that I want to see the way I want to see it. You go to View. And Zoom will say Zoom out, and now you have it. So if you can't see things like where are my guides, where are my rulers, like for instance, you should always have your rulers on. I don't see my rulers, so I'll go to View, Show my rulers. Show rulers. Now rulers are really critical. You'll see them on the upper and never see them on the lower right, always in the upper left. And what you do is you can mouse down and drag these guides down so that you can see, and they help you to know how to use them if you need to have something that you're balancing over on the left side. So these are guides. And so when you're in the view, you want to hide the guides or lock the guides or clear the guides. So sometimes you spend a lot of time on guides, especially if you're making a pattern. And so you want to lock them and you can save them. They actually become layers. That's the next thing I don't see here is you must always, always, always work with your layers on. So window is on many programs in Adobe. So a lot of tools are under window. Yes, the tools can be found here in the horizontal. And I want to get rid of this guy up here. Sorry. It's confusing me. I don't know where my dashboard is. There we go. Now, okay. So up here, as you can see, there are tools up here, like Object, there's Transform, but Windows will give me what I want, which is called windows that you need. So layers is something critical that you must have. And I'm a right-handed person, so I'm going to keep it to the left. And you always want to keep your layers all the way open. You never want to have it so that it's closed like this. Like, where are things? No, always open. Because in Illustrator, there are 100 files. And it's a little unruly. And it gets really frustrating. But if you keep things organized, it doesn't get unruly. So it's important to know why you open up your layers all the way, because you never know when you're going to drop down one of these windows. And that's when you need them all. The other thing too is you can mouse down and just scroll to turn these things off. And then just turn things one on at a time. So that's nice. And you can scroll back up. I don't know if yeah, you can. So in that case, that's how you can be able to, and the same thing with Photoshop, you can scroll things because you do a lot of turning on and turning off, but not so much in, I'm trying to think if Photoshop has this. I'm already confused. But anyway, the reason why I'm saying this is that if you notice up here, if I wanted to just focus on this cup, I could double click this and it throws me into a cryptic window here. So now this is completely isolated, and no matter what I touch, it's only going to touch that one layer, as you can see here. They call it isolation, but technically they actually rip this off from Animate and Flash. And this is how we work in Flash. You can, in animation, there's 1,000 things going on. So sometimes you have to fix one thing. So you double click, double click, double click, and you go into the hierarchy down, down, down. And this window will literally show you the hierarchy of the entire piece. Illustrator took that from Animate and built it into Illustrator because it's the same thing. In layers, in Illustrator, you have 1,000 layers. So you got to be able to work on things independently. Double clicking it will bring you to this cryptic window here. So just come out of it, keep clicking, and now you're back to all the levels. So that's one little new tool that's in Illustrator, but it's so incredibly useful and incredibly effective in multimedia, especially in animation. Okay, so a couple of things to think about. We're going to do the placing, so we're going to go into place. Place is import. I don't know why they don't use the word import. It would make my life easier, but place is putting something, placing the object into your document. So that's an import, but thank goodness they use the word for export. Export will give you the export. And so when you are working in Illustrator, it is a vector program. It is an AI, as you can see here, for Adobe Illustrator. And you cannot upload this to WordPress. WordPress doesn't accept PSDs, which is Photoshop, and WordPress does not accept AIs. So therefore, when you're working in Illustrator or Photoshop, you have to export it to become a JPEG. And you want to use JPEG because, and so you can go export, export as. Now you could do save for web. What save for web will do is take that 300 DPI and compress it to 72 DPI. That's good. Things will load faster because it's up on the web. High resolution things on the web take a long time. There's a lot of traffic on the web called users. And so it's a little bit like our freeways and highways, jammed at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So, but you can use JPEGs for printing. So you want the high resolution. So high resolution, you want to export it as is. And here it will bring you all the different formats that you can use. So you might have to zoom in or look closely to this. So JPEG is right here. So it will give me a JPEG at a 300 DPI. Save for web is going to give me a 72 DPI. Real important stuff when you're doing deliverables. So, but let's just take a look at this. So you can also export a DWG. That is for CAD, and that is for 3D animation. So you can import your silhouettes into a 3D program and turn it into a 3D object. So drawing is really good. Same thing for fashion designers. It can go into CAD. CSS is very interesting that it actually can generate code. Love that. Flash, yes, it can generate an SWF. You can import that. And ping, anyone know the difference between a JPEG and a ping?
Isn't one transparent, the other isn't?
Yes, that's all that's most important. Exactly. Photoshop, obviously. Now, this is what you love about Photoshop. So you could be working in Illustrator and export it as a PSD, and the resolution is unbelievable. So sometimes when I'm doing line work, I'd much rather be in Illustrator than in Photoshop. It depends. So that's important. And so that's how you get your work out into a format that is going to be able to be what you need for WordPress to export, or if you want to send it to somebody as well. And that would be for web. Anything that you send via email should be for web. So file is the only other important thing outside of place is the export, as I said. And you will begin to, this one export, I'm trying to find the thing I'm looking for here, is the scripts. Image tracing, that's interesting. We'll talk about images. Does anybody know what image tracing does? Just out of curiosity, if anybody knows. So image tracing is right here. Image tracing, when you place a photograph, it will convert it to vector. That's what image trace does. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good. You have to play with the variables. But it's really nice. It's kind of a quick way to make something that might have not such good resolution become good resolution because you converted a bitmap to be vector. So we'll talk about those techniques as we go along. So file is important for new, and please, every 30 seconds, save. Don't talk to your family until you've done that Control-S or Command-S. Don't even turn your head to them until you save. Really, really important. You can get a lot done in a half hour. So save all the time. Save particularly to one folder. So this project will be called Logo Design. Make a folder just for logo design. Eventually, you'll have one big folder that will have logo design, social media, and time base for the organization. But right now, all we need is a logo design folder. Know where things are. And please, 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 please do not save on the desktop. Ever. The only time you save on the desktop is things that you don't care about. Literally. Because if you have a crash, you will lose everything on your desktop. But if you have a crash, you can save things off your hard drive. And if you know a little bit of IT, when you save heavy files on your desktop, it takes the memory away from your computer. So that's where most people get into trouble because they don't know that. So Bottom line, I learned that I never saved important files on the desktop again. So that's a little tip I'm letting you know. So revert is if you didn't save it and you can't find something, reverts it back to the last save. But let's go through edit. And this is how I crack software. When you crack software, you go down every menu. You look at every arrow, turn it down, open it, and go, oh, that's interesting. Don't know what it does, but here it is. So for us in edit, the only thing really important in edit is copy and paste in place. We'll find something, mostly never use any of this stuff, literally. Preferences gets into the nitty gritty of the UI of Illustrator. We'll go through that. But object, very important. So let's highlight something. Object, now notice things will be grayed out. And what that means is that you haven't selected it. So when you go like, why is this grayed out? Because your selection is incorrect. So like right there, I went to it, nothing was accessible. I had to click something. And the one thing I'm missing right here is what? My toolbar. I don't have tools. So very important, outside of the toolbar is your layers. You must have the toolbar open, and hopefully they've given you everything that you need. When you launch this version, every time I open up a new version, they have it in place. So again, here's an arrow, mouse down. Here's an arrow, mouse down. Here's an arrow, mouse down. Everything is here. So a lot of things are hidden. It's the one program of any Adobe program that has a lot of cryptic things going on. So let's go back. And the reason why I was like, where's my toolbar? Is because I wanted to have the black arrow. And the black arrow selects so I can move things around. The white arrow selects the points. So let's go in and do that. Zoom. So I just know automatically Z, and you can get the shortcut. If you roll over the toolbar, it will give you the shortcut. And this is probably not accessible to me because there. It's probably clipped as what it probably is, and that's why I can't get to it. And so because I'm in a point mode, and as you see, I did select this, so this is still a point, and I can, and white won't help, so double click, and it becomes red. And so right away, double click, and that's the same thing in Photoshop. But these points, and this is why we love the points. We get to play with them. So if you can't get that curve, as they say, photographers fix it in Photoshop. Drawers, illustrators say, I fix it in Illustrator. And it's because of this Bezier curve. Now you can get these curves on freehand drawings, but you can also get them with a pen. So the overview is black moves the objects, white edits the points. And that's the world of Illustrator. It's either moving the object, copy paste, or move it, or edit the points. And because these are vectors. And again, Command Z, Control Z gets everything back in place. Whoops. Zoom, fit out, fit in all in window. And I turned everything off. Let's turn everything back on. I don't know what happened right there, but it disappeared. So just, again, just like something happened to me, it will happen to you. It's not because you're a beginner. It's because you're working with software. It's not easy. So just remember, if you can't, like, where am I? Which happens often, and I say, just like I said, like, why did that disappear? Just go back to your view, zoom out, check your layers. Oh, everything's turned off. Oh, my color is white. That's why I don't see it. So it's important to remember, you have to double check yourself, and that can only happen if you have the layer window open and the toolbar open. And again, if you don't have the tools here, these three dots down here will give you the ability, and I have it to be basic right now. And over here, this kind of throws away things as far as tools are concerned. You don't really use that unless you're presenting or something like that. Maybe if I was on a Zoom call with a client, I would do that so they don't see all the tools. But for us, we want to see all the tools. So edit again, paste and place, copy and paste. You'll come to love that. Don't really use any of this. Object transform is important. Let's go back and select something. Select that object. So there you have transform. And you have the rotate, the move, and the reflect. And often, if you notice, this is not the case in Photoshop, is you can make a copy when you rotate or flip or horizontal or vertical. So in other words, it just takes whatever you have selected and flips it. Object, let's do that again. It's still selected. Object, groupings. Groupings are really critical in Illustrator. It's very, very different in Photoshop. In Photoshop, you have to make a layer. In Illustrator, it makes the layers all the time. Almost too much. And so you get a lot of layers. Like for instance, let's take a look at this word, right? This has been grouped. How do I know that? Because it's under one layer. Now these could be all separate layers like the way these are, but I have grouped them. So grouping is very important because every blessed thing becomes a layer. And so therefore, we often use this tool called the lasso tool. Where are you, lasso? I am not seeing my lasso. It's my lasso here. So the lasso tool is what you have in Photoshop as well. And it's also here. And I'm trying to find it because I don't see it. So I do see a lot of things that are not in my toolbar. So now they've either buried it. Nope, nope, nope. Welcome to the world of software. I'm not feeling this. I'm looking for lasso. If somebody sees it before I do, that will be helpful. Now, it would be nice if they would put, now this is what I start designing.
It's there, Professor. It's just grayed out under the magic wand when you did the, when you click the three dots at the bottom. No, you have to like open up that window again.
Yeah, if it's grayed out, it should be there for me, right? And you see the lasso?
Yeah, it's below the magic wand up top.
Oh, there it is. But why isn't it? So it is here. So it is somewhere. So they buried it, is what they did. Let me see if I can get reset. No.
Someone's saying in the chat to maybe press the white arrow.
Ah, they put it under the lasso. So now you can tell I'm such an old dog at this, right? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So welcome to the world of software. When I am, and this is a brand new version, right? Because every time you log in, I have the same subscription that you have. So that means they've updated the version and they've changed everything. So the lasso is here. And you can actually change that lasso to be somewhere else on the toolbar, but we'll show you that later. So the reason why I wanted the lasso, because it's a very, very important tool, is when you're grouping, you often go like this. And then if you hit Shift key, technically, this should unselect it, which it did. I'll repeat myself. Let's deselect. So you do a lot of deselecting. Deselecting basically means selecting off of the object to unhinge what is selected. And this is really meticulous in Illustrator as well as 3D animation programs. So I'll use the lasso again. I'm going to grab this and I sort of grab, I don't want this. So I'm shift keying down, going to the black arrow, selecting this like I don't want you selected, and it unselects it. And I don't want the outline. See if it'll undo that. There. See? Very meticulous. Takes time to get used to, but you will. And so then now everything that I want is selected. And if you notice, some of these are selected and this is also. So Los Angeles is grouped together. Now I'll come over here, I'll go Object, and I'll go Group. And now this is all together. That is how you keep your sanity with Illustrator. So you don't just randomly make all these layers. You do work on one thing and you go, okay, I'm done with this one thing. I'm gonna group it together now. Then you work on another thing and you group that. Notice that all of it is in one layer, which really confuses you. But one layer can hold many groupings. Now, it used to be in the old day, we used to make a separate main layer for everything. The only time we do that is if we were doing a very complicated project. So if I was doing a portrait, an illustration of a portrait, I would put the face in one folder. I would put the body, the shoulders in another folder. Then the face and everything within the face would be eyes would be one folder, ears would be one folder. A grouping is what I'm talking about, which looks like a folder. So that's why groupings are so important in Illustrator.